Something interesting happening in the collectible space. And we've all seen the rise of things like Funko Pops, figurines, blind boxes, blind bags, just a lot of different little things. They're often tied to pop culture. And one thing about pop culture is that not only are the characters important, but the setting, the scene, the era are also important. So what I've been noticing in the collectible space lately is a push towards dioramas. Not only do we get the characters as they are, we also get them in their native setting. Now, one company sent me a whole bunch of stuff, Wilder Toys, from their brand new line, Console Heroes. And just like I talked about at the top of the video, this not only combines figurines, it combines pop culture, and it also combines dioramas in a very interesting and unique way. And the way is by placing those franchises, those characters, those settings in time by the way of video games. In this instance, Sega Genesis. Full disclosure here, I was a Sega Genesis fanboy when it came out, mostly due to the fact that there was no money to also get a Super Nintendo, which I was mostly jealous of other people having. Fortunately, now I can look back and realize just how great the Sega Genesis system was. It was phenomenal with Sonic the Hedgehog. Some personal favorites were Booger Man, Vector Man, Bubsy. Not only did I really like those specific characters, it's also where I got a taste of things like Street Fighter, Altered Beast, and yes, Joe Montana's Sports Talk Football. So imagine my surprise when Wilder Toys reached out to me and said, "Hey, we got something for you to take a look at." And it involved Sega Genesis. I immediately said yes to whatever it was. Thankfully, it was a really cool diorama collectible hybrid. So let's dive into these boxes. We'll take a look at Console Heroes, Altered Beast, the Sega Genesis, base playset, and last but certainly not least, Super Street Fighter 2, Ken's stage. So we have a Ryu and a Ken fighting on Ken's stage. So when I open this up, that's exactly what I'm going to be looking for. But as you noticed from the packaging of this, everything is contained in this Sega Genesis style cartridge. And when I compared it to an actual Sega Genesis style cart, it seems roughly the same size. I'm curious whether or not the depth of it is. I don't think it could be, though. No. So now we have all of our figurines displayed. We have Ken, we have Ryu, we have our Hadouken, and we have various little bits that we are going to attach to our diorama that, again, roughly the same size as a Sega Genesis cart, just a little bit wider. In fact, I'm going to grab my Sonic the Hedgehog so we can compare really closely what these look like. So here we go, getting this Sonic the Hedgehog cartridge out. And wouldn't you know, roughly the same length and height, but when it comes to width, I would say, yep, it's a little over double a normal cart. Now, the reason for that is because this is going to have to hinge up to get us access to the diorama to put our figurines in. So here we go, and there it is. There is our 16-bit stage. This really captures the Ken's stage very well, and not only is there a printed piece, a printed sticker in the back, but we have a relief, or I guess a sculpture of the boat that is very prominent in Ken's stage right here, in all of the pegs that everything sits on. Now, from the looks of it, as we have Ken on Ken's stage, we can put this in a number of different ways. So we could have it be really close to each other. All of the pegs for the feet are the same size, but we're just going to give it a little bit of room here because I want to have the full scene represented. So there we have the Hadouken up. You can see just how this is building on itself. Now, what I like about this is that you can make micro adjustments. I don't have to have him specifically tied to just one area of the peg. I can pivot him around the peg. So far, this looks really good. And for the four corners of the stage, we have these moorings, these cleats. I don't know the exact nomenclature for them, but they add a nice level of detail to the overall profile of this so that we get a sense of more depth. Now, if you're thinking about the 16-bit era as I'm putting this together, you'll understand that it was a very flat world. And to have this level of depth to it, to be able to tilt and pan and move this around to see exactly what those fights would look like is kind of fun. And now, to round this out, we have our health bar clip that, depending on how I slot this in, it should go roughly in the middle of it. And wouldn't you know, it fits nicely. It does just miss the sticker of the game case, so it's not going to rub over time. It's not going to peel away the sticker. And to take a look at the sticker, it is a very faithful recreation of the, I guess, console cover art for Super Street Fighter 2. I guess cartridge art would be the better term. But there we have it. There is our Ken's stage. This is a very fun little thing. Now, if I wanted to close it, I couldn't do that because there's just stuff in the way. However, I am curious whether or not I can close this in on itself so that everything fits the way it should. And if I wanted to, if I could pack this up. So let's see, does this fit down? Doesn't quite fit down. So if you wanted to pack this up, you're going to have to find storage outside of this and then reopen it, keeping it all together. All right, so there it is, all situated back up. We have 2 more of these boxes to go through. So I wanted to give you the unboxing experience of one of these standalone cartridges, and then we'll get the Altered Beast one out. I'm also going to unbox the large overall Sega Genesis console, which has like multiple layers. It's a much bigger thing. And then why not? Then after all of that, I'll rank them all. Which ones do I like the best? Stay tuned. There we go. Just put the finishing touches on our Altered Beast. It's a different one, but it follows a similar pattern as the Super Street Fighter 2 one. So we have something that clips on the top, we have a blast effect, we have our 2 figurines, and we also have a clip-on near the bottom as well. Game accurate, and it gives us, again, that 3D placement of these very iconic, memorable things. The central piece for this is the Sega Genesis console itself, and just like the cartridges, it also flips up to reveal a scene. However, this one isn't dependent on a time or a place, more so just overall Sega Genesis aesthetics. There is a unifying theme though, and the theme is that of the supervillains, and we'll get into that. But however, there is also a pack-in cartridge. So you don't just have the Sega Genesis, you also get Sonic the Hedgehog, which if you remember, or I guess anybody who was alive to remember the original Sega Genesis, that's how the pack worked. And here we have our Labyrinth Zone 3 Sonic the Hedgehog case. We are fighting against Dr. Robotnik here. The other thing too, before you open up the big giant Sega Genesis, you also get this game cartridge tray, which is something that you would have seen initially back in the 16-bit era. However, this one, the width of this allows you to put these game cartridges in there. Now, of course, you're going to have to remove some of these figures and stuff and find a way to store those. But if you want to load up your cartridge case with the cartridges that you own from the Console Heroes series, apparently that's a possibility and a really cool nod to that particular era. Now, this is the Super Villains bundle for the main Sega Genesis console, and we have the Death Egg Robot right here. We have Deathbringer. If you're not sure where he's from Golden Axe. We have Metal Sonic. If you don't know where Metal Sonic's from, I don't know how much I can help you there. And then here's Mr. X from Streets of Rage. So you can see we have a wide net cast for most Sega Genesis properties that people remember. These are the big ones. And the cool thing is if I'm looking at all of the pegs on the bottom of their feet, they're interoperable with the other dioramas. And so let me grab one of those and we'll add, well, let's put Metal Sonic in a diorama. Here we have our Altered Beast diorama. There is a spare peg right behind, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put Metal Sonic right there, and you can see just how these will work between worlds. And so there you go. If you wanted to set up a diorama with these figurines across games, that is a possibility. And I think that's a really good possibility because it would have been easy to either key these holes for specific pegs to make it a very fixed diorama, but here it's more fluid. You're able to get more choices and to possibly set up a mashup that you've always wanted in your 16-bit days. But here we go. Here is the Sega Genesis. So as I open it up here, we have a blank space for all of our characters to sit. Now, as you notice, there are a ton of pegs situated across this vast, I guess it's almost like a Star Trek holodeck style void for Sega Genesis, even though this is the very classic Sega Genesis look and feel. The other thing that I'm getting a little bit from this is almost like a Super Smash Bros. Stage where you can have characters square up and face off in 3x3 battles. So considering this is a supervillains group, let's put all of our supervillains on this side and possibly at that point put some of our heroes on the other. Now we're going to have a mashup of Streets of Rage, of Sonic the Hedgehog, and now Golden Axe. I still want to get the giant Death Egg Robot on here. I think that would be great just to round out the entire collection. And this one, there we go. So here we have our villains lined up. We're going to need to balance this out with some heroes. There we go. I think we have a fair fight now. I'm sure the most common usage of this will be to display all of your figurines all at once. Now for Series 1, the only ones that I'm missing are Sonic 2 and Sonic 3, which rounds out the Sonic collection if you don't count Sonic and Knuckles. But in theory, you could display all of your Wave 1 on this first generation Series 1 Sega Genesis. That gives you an overview of what these are like. I think there's a lot packed into them, and there's a lot of, I guess, configurability when it comes to creating your diorama. There is one position that is, I guess, technically the correct position, but you do have a little bit of leeway to move and pivot the figures around, especially if you get the Sega Genesis base, like the playset, because it's going to allow you to display multiple figures on multiple tiers without, I guess, being anchored to a specific diorama. It's more of a blank slate that gives overall celebration, I would say, of the Sega Genesis 16-bit era. So like everything that I evaluate, I want to talk about things that I like, things that I didn't like, things I possibly would have changed. The one thing that I really like about this Console Heroes initial wave is just how well and how closely it emulates that era. So because I have Sega Genesis cartridges, I was able to compare it with what is an actual cartridge, and wouldn't you know, the dimensions of it are roughly the same, except it's about double the width because you need to clamshell it open. So the fidelity to that era is incredible. And another thing that I really like about this is the fact that these aren't just your typical figurines that you could just pull off a shelf and then put on another shelf. You have to be a little intentional with how these are set up because of the diorama aspect, which I think really works in the favor of this line of toys, because it doesn't just give you a piece of plastic that is tied to a memory. This allows you to recreate and reconstruct a memory based on a character, setting, and time, which is a powerful mixture when you're dealing with things that are nostalgia-based. And make no mistake, this Console Hero stuff is all very nostalgic. In terms of something I didn't like necessarily about these, is these little flags that hung off of the clamshell. I guess the concern really comes down to, like, I worry over time how well these are going to stick and stay in place. I guess that's one thing we'll see over time. One thing I would have changed, but not really changed, it would be more so like added, is maybe give just a few more accessories to the overall dioramas, because that was the most fun part for me of constructing this diorama, is adding these little bits. So here we have this ivy that can come down, and I can rotate it. These little spikes, you have some leeway in terms of where they go. Placement of the fighters, it would have been cool to maybe have a red version of the Hadouken. Something that would give it a little bit of twist, a little bit of tweak that could really make it your own. Again, that's not something I would change, it's more so something that I would add, hopefully for a Wave 2. So going back to the very start of this video and talking about how collectibles are changing, how they're evolving, how they're morphing into this new era, and I think that this diorama aspect is a really good idea. And I think it can't be understated enough that with these Console Heroes, the fact that it clamshells open and closed, that they are tiny little figurines, you're not taking up a whole lot of shelf space. It's very economical with the space given, because not only does it really sell the idea that this is a Sega Genesis cartridge bursting to life, but it's also a tiny bit reminiscent of Polly Pocket or Mighty Max. And it seems that some inspiration was taken from a guy named Steve Casino online who creates Nintendo NES cartridges and makes them 3D. It really feels like they've translated that very custom, artsy, crafty bit that not only hits on nostalgia, but also collectability. Now, to rank these, I think my very favorite one is the Super Street Fighter 2. The second favorite, this is a close 1 and 2, is the Sonic the Hedgehog, and then the third place is the Altered Beast, mostly because I don't have many memories playing Altered Beast other than a Blockbuster rental of it. And if you're wondering where the overall console playset fits in that, I don't think it necessarily ties into the individual cartridges. I think it's just a nice collectible stand for everything that you're collecting in the Wave. And the reason for that is because it gives you that tray to put the cartridges in when you're displaying all of your figures on this, I guess, playset. So thank you to Wilder Toys for sending these out and giving me a very early look at Console Heroes. I'm really excited to see where this line goes. And if you like this discussion on collectibles, pop culture, video games, this hits on just about everything that we talk about here. Stay tuned for the Ri-Fi channel, and to do that, hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for videos in the future. So that's all I know about Console Heroes, the Sega Genesis Wave 1. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.